about transformation and about helping other people push through obstacles in their life and stuff. And that's really what I was all about. I found as a chiropractor, I was limited, not limited, but I felt limited in just dealing with the body, the nervous system, subluxations, things like that. I started working with the mind, the emotions, and I found a lot of breakthroughs were taking place there. In fact, I found most of what was happening with people's health was happening between their ears. And when I discovered that, I began to work that way, working with that part of the nervous system, the brain, and using feedback mechanisms like applied kinesiology, which is muscle testing and getting stuff done that way. Long story short, fast forward, I discovered that there was a subconscious being. We like to think of it as a subconscious mind, but it's actually a subconscious being that actually has its own intelligence. And this being had its own way of doing things. When I first started out, in fact, today, by the way, is an anniversary. 20 years ago, anybody remember what happened in Atlanta? We had a humongous snowstorm. And I remember it was thundering and lightning and it was snowing. This is March 13th, 1993. And I remember that day because that's the day I traveled across town worried about her, thinking that she wasn't answering her phone because I was worried about her safety and health and all that. So I traveled through the snow and the thunder and the lightning to get to her, and I haven't left since. We've been together ever since that day. So this is our 20th anniversary of being together forever and ever, my one and only. So
she snowed you.
Yeah, it was a snow job.
I don't know. I steam cleaned the house.
Yeah, she steam cleaned. I called her, but she wasn't answering them. And back up a little bit, I had a girlfriend kill herself, so I was like, no, so I was like freaking out. And so when she wasn't answering the phone, I was driving this little Honda through the snow and the sleet and the ice and it was thundering and lightning. I remember that. I said, this is the freakiest storm I've ever seen in my life. But I made it through, and I got through, and she was okay. She was steam cleaning. And so, and then I was so happy, I stayed with her ever since. So that's the story of us. So anyway, that's for the record. I discovered this being that was inside. I was doing muscle testing and trying to figure out what was this. Why was my life not working the way it should? Why was I not making money? Why was I not being successful? Why couldn't I do the things I wanted to do? Why were all these tragedies and disasters happening in my life? I tried to figure this out. And I couldn't figure it out. But I figured there was a being inside of me that was making things happen. And in fact, what I did was I called this being the one who makes things happen. For lack of a better term, that's what I called it. And so with that said, I just started testing and speaking to this being as if it were an intelligent being. And lo and behold, I started getting answers. And I kept going along this way, and I began to find out that there was there was a limit to what I could find out from this being. First of all, there seemed to be a wall. Anybody ever try to do something and you just sort of hit the wall and you just can't get beyond that wall, like you're trying to lose weight or trying to make money work or relationships work, something work, and it just doesn't happen. Anybody have that experience? Ever? Just me?
Yeah.
Good. And I discovered that when I hit that wall, I had no access to what lay behind it. And in logical soul work, what I discovered was that there's a field of decisions. Everything happens because a decision is made. Nothing happens when a decision is not made. A decision relates to computers. For example, a computer has switches. Notice that the circuits or whatever on, off, on, off, on, off. Everything you see on a computer screen is glitches, ons and offs. And you can actually set up logic, and that's how computers were set up, logic based on whether or not this circuit flows or whether it doesn't flow. And so it's either a yes or a no. Like that, we have synapses in the nervous system, the brain, and we're only using a very, very small fraction of our capacity, simply because there's so much going on all the time. If we were to be aware of everything happening right now, we'd be totally overwhelmed because there's so much stimulus coming into us. We have a reticular activating system that filters out and makes sure that we're stable. In other words, make sure that we only get the information that we need. So consequently, we can only hold maybe 2 or 3 items in our mind at one time before we start getting a little freaky. So like that, I started testing the subconscious being, and I discovered that it was an intelligence just like any other intelligent being, except it was more so. I found it was very intuitive, very powerful. And I remember we were living together, and I was walking down the hallway, and this book fell off the shelf in my path. Anybody ever had that happen? And then I opened the book, and I saw exactly what I needed to see. There was this book that somebody had given me 10 years before that. His name was Ed Steele. He gave me a book called The Secret Behind the Miracles by Max Freedom Long. And I just happened to open to that page that started talking about this being that I was testing. I'd never opened the book before. This is the first time it happened. And I still have the book. And it just opened to that section where it started talking about this Una Hipili, or this inner being that the Hunas, or the Kahunas talked about in Hawaii. And they said there were 3 separate beings, and I was like, holy cow, this is amazing. And I started looking at that, started testing it. I didn't just take it on face value. I started testing what it was saying. And that's how I came up with the logical soul. That plus the idea that I discovered there was a way of getting access beyond what I called the wall. In other words, there's this block that stood in the way between me and what I wanted. And that block, you either had access or you didn't. And most of the time that wall or that block stood in the way. And the way I got access was simply asking the wall. You know? A lot of times if we hit the wall, what are we trying to do? How many of you use affirmations, or you go through hypnosis, or maybe you're using NLP or some form of tapping or something? What we're trying to do is affect that wall. What we're trying to do is affect our so-called homeostasis. In other words, we exist in a stable condition, and this stable condition means I don't like new things too much. Just sort of, the status quo is fine. Let's just keep going the way we're going and looking at the same things we're looking at. And we're always on the lookout for more happiness, however. But as far as stability, we're always trying to hold ourselves together, pull it together. Remember that expression? So consequently, when new things happen, we tend to sort of shut those out. Now, this homeostasis is in our subconscious. In other words, our subconscious says, this is our parameter. These are our parameters. This is our fence. We're going to stay inside this fence. If we go outside of that, it's dangerous. And we set these parameters up based on the idea that we're going to survive and stay safe if we stay within these parameters. That's what I call the law of very good reason. Subconscious has a very good reason for setting these parameters, pulling up this wall and saying, you can't go beyond this. And we listen to it because we don't know any better. We don't know how to get beyond or get access beyond that wall. And so consequently, we defined the parameters before we were 6 years old, for the most part, and we stay there. And that's how we live our lives. With Logical Soul, I found that doesn't have to stay the same. I found that there's a way of getting beyond that wall, getting access to those hidden, deep-rooted decisions that run our lives right now, and we don't have access to them, but now we do. Now we can get access to that. The one who made the decision can change the decision. We just need to touch base with the one who made that decision, whether it's our inner child, or whether it's our ancestors, or whether it's a family member, or whoever it is. And this is a way of doing that.